We're about news, commentary, conversations, truth, liberty, and God. We stand for American values and our flag. We believe that the Constitution is a document that fortifies rights already given to us by our Creator. We will not apologize for our love of God and country, ever. We are Right America Media.
Welcome to a brand spanking new edition of Granite State Live. Great to have you along on this Tuesday evening, the 27th day of May, 2025. I'm your host, Keith Hansen, the unapologetic contrarian conservative, heavily armed as always. Would you expect me not to be? Never apologizing for my toxic white masculinity. I can't help it, folks. I was born this way. So my doctor considers it a pre-existing condition. Never apologizing for my Christian faith, ever.
Hello, and I'm your co-host, blue-collar intellectual Julian Aciard, here to, start some shit and piss some people off, and let's go. Let's dig into it.
All right, let's do that. And we are joined in studio tonight by Erica Layon. She is she is a state rep, one of the 400. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Get that cool license plate. Everything is awesome. State Representative Republican representing the 6th District of Rockingham, specifically Derry. Great to have you along tonight.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Our call-in number, if you'd like to be a part of the program, we make it nice and easy for you. 833-603-TALK. I know, for the past 3 months, we've been saying, hey, the phone lines work. I'm getting the nod from the producer that indeed they are actually working. So you can be the first to try it. 833-603-8255. That's 833-603-TALK. If you'd like to join us via video link, you can do that as well, too. Just send an email to granitestatelive@gmail.com. Put the words video link in the subject line, and the production team will zap that link out to you, and you can join us. We're going to be spending the first hour tonight talking with Erica about a couple of different things here. And yeah, we're going to push the envelope because that's what we do. And then coming up in hour number 2, we're going to be joined by Vandersteel as well, too. So we have got a fantastic program for you. Hope that you can stick around for the duration of it. All right, let's get right into it. Where do we want to start? Do we want to talk about the tranny murders? Do we want to go there?
Oh, wait, well...
we kind of do, don't we?
Let's do it.
Let's do that. So, one of the things that I find very interesting is this rhetoric that, I have to be honest. I open the show up, and as I have, actually, ever since my WNTK, WUVR days, I've opened up with I'm the unapologetic contrarian conservative, because I really don't give a rat's ass about your feelings. If I offend you, go cry yourself to sleep. We'll get over it. I don't apologize for my toxic white masculinity. In fact, I give it a big old bro hug, as a matter of fact. And I don't apologize for my Christian faith, because my predominant worldview is predicated upon my faith. How I see my world and how I interact with my world is based upon my Judeo-Christian beliefs. I don't apologize for that either. I have a good understanding of what's right and what's wrong. And I have said these things, never apologizing for the toxic white masculinity, never apologizing for the Christian faith, because it pisses the left off. And I am proud to embody every value that the left hates. So, listen, if I can get you to lose your shit every once in a while, awesome. I love it. And let's not forget, this is entertainment. First and foremost, this is entertainment. I had somebody say to me once, you're a terrible reporter. I'm like, newsflash for you, Skippy. Clearly you didn't get the message. I'm not a reporter, all right? I do not want to do what Adam Sexton claims to do. He's not a reporter either, by the way. He's just a mouthpiece for his wife and the left, who is the left, basically. But the point being is, I like getting reactions out of people because it gets the dialogue going, and by and large, we're entertainers. People like getting pissed. People like listening and watching media that pisses them off. They're addicted to that rage. So we're going to feed you some rage hormones tonight. I got to be honest. I'm so tired of this transgender, transsexual. Erica, you had mentioned poly earlier, and I'm like, I'm tired of trying to figure out what these terms mean, because everybody has to identify in some unique way. Everybody wants to be special. And I notice that it's almost as if when the social media influencer term became a thing, that's when everybody had to have their own unique identification, and you have to validate it. Otherwise, you're a racist, you're a Nazi, you're a homophobe, you're what other pejoratives can we throw onto the woodpile?
Oh, fascist.
You're fascist.
You're a theocratic ethno state, Christian nationalist. That's what it is. The Christian nationalist. That's the favorite of the left so far.
So, but I just have to make one comment before I continue with this. If you're on the left side of the aisle, if you spent a quarter of the amount of time developing your analytical framework and your critical thinking skills as you did memorizing a thesaurus, you'd probably be better off. And I'm being serious about that, because you got a word for everything. But what you don't have is a critical argument. You don't have a well-developed critical thinking platform. You cannot analyze. It's as if that portion of your brain, however, the neural circuits just are not connected. That's okay. I mean,
let's be honest, they don't have to. They've been taking the position that they're morally superior, and if you're morally superior, or at least in your own mind, you don't have to spend any time actually having, rational dialogue. And there are rational people who happen to vote Democrat, but you notice those aren't the ones who are loud and obnoxious. The ones who are loud and most outspoken, the ones we have to hear from all the time, are the ones who they take the position that they don't have to debate you. That to debate you would be to humor the possibility that they could be wrong or that you could be right.
So a week ago Sunday, I was in Cambridge, Massachusetts. There was a talk, Born in the Right Body. Jamie Reed, who's a whistleblower from Washington University, was there. Simon Amaya Price, Lisa Celine Davis, who was a former New York Times reporter. They were all there, and then we did something really awful. We all decided to have dinner and talk. There was a huge protest outside the Glass House in Cambridge, and they were screaming and beating drums. Jamie was trying to have a conversation with people. Somebody was asking her questions, and other people came and were blowing whistles and beating drums to prevent somebody from having a discussion with another Democrat about gender ideology. Right now, they're shutting down the conversation instead of having it, and that's a real problem.
Of course, because, by shutting down the conversation, they don't have to hit that point of rational discussion where the average person realizes that we're not that far apart on things. Because if the 80% of the people in the country, and let's be honest, 90% of the people in the country on this particular issue were to have a discussion about it, all of a sudden they realize that it's you who live this and you're an activist, and then the crazy Marxist spokespeople who are spokespersons who are constantly making this an issue in the national dialogue, that you guys are crazies, and then they can be cast to the children's table while the rest of us adults have a discussion about actually solving real issues that affect, the rest of America.
Going back to, and I mean, again, from 2015 to 2019, I was doing, 30 hours of live extemporaneous radio every week. So I would love to go back and find the episode that I put this concept out the first, because I would really love to be able to play this and say, here it is from the archives. And this is going back to, I want to say 2017. I spent several months talking about postmodernism and the encroachment of postmodernism into modern day politics. And one of the things that I forecasted was you are going to see a time when the left is just going to outright stop debating anybody on the opposite side of the aisle, primarily because, and this is, again, if you really start to dive into like Jacques Foucault and the early modern, and when I say early modern, we're talking 1950s, 1960s. Remember, postmodernism stems from primarily literary professors in France and in other corners of Europe, but it was primarily French. The late 1950s, early 1960s really gave birth to this postmodern movement. And it stems from literature. And it's a very, very simple concept to understand. Have you ever, and you and I have had the conversation before, so I'll ask Erica, did you ever in high school have to take a poem and interpret the poem?
We did.
Okay. And I hated that. I actually had in my senior year in classical literature, we had to interpret a Shakespearean soliloquy. And I simply put down Shakespeare was meant to be performed, not to be interpreted and analyzed. And I got an A on it. So it was one of the easiest assignments that I had ever done. But when you interpret literature, if you interpret that poem, are you not taking your own knowledge and subjective aspects of your life and imparting those words? You're giving words meaning based upon what you know, what you see, what you experience, what your predominant worldview is. So the earliest thing in postmodernism was, well, you take the word and you understand the word in the context of the sentence. And then you understand the sentence in the context of the paragraph, and then the paragraph in the context of the chapter, and the chapter in the context of the entire work. And you apply these interpretations. And this is the earliest understanding, or the earliest way of understanding, when you hear a leftist say, well, that's not my reality. Because reality is subjective when you're taking the postmodern approach. Because who are you to tell me what my reality is? If my brain tells me, despite the fact that I've got a meat and two veg hanging there, that I'm really a chick, well, then who are you to question that? If I say that I identify as being handicapped, this is something that we've seen the past couple of years. People, I identify as a handicapped person, so I'm going to have a limb surgically amputated, so that way there I can live out this fantasy. And who the hell are you to question my reality? So in keeping with these postmodern concepts, one of the things is that if you have a conversation with somebody and you validate their argument, you are, in essence, manifesting their reality. I'll let that sink in first. I mean, it's like, whoa, okay, wait a minute. Wow.
No, it sounds like dealing with growing up with a bipolar parent.
Yes.
They have a different view on reality, and either you acknowledge that and play into that view of reality, or you don't.
Yeah. So this is literally, well, who are you to question my version of reality? And this is postmodernism. And when you look at a lot of what the playbooks of the left are and the playing rules of the left right now, if you have even a foundational understanding of what postmodernism is and how it works and what the foundational philosophies and principles of postmodernism are, it's very, very easy to understand what's happening. So one of the things that I had said, again, going back to 2017, was you are going to see a time when people are not, and I said this in the context of Ray Buckley, Ray's not going to want to debate me, not because he doesn't think that my media is valid. It's not that he thinks that I'm going to kick his ass in a debate, that I'm going to out intellectualize him. He is not going to want to debate because he will not want to manifest my reality. And by debating it, it brings it into reality, it makes it real, and it gives it credence and credibility. Have you ever had somebody say to you in an argument, I'm not even going to dignify that with a response?
Yes, I actually had Matt Walsh said it to me. Like, yeah, I challenged the methodology of his critique of black culture as collectivism. And my argument was that as a conservative, we believe in individual responsibility for individual actions, not collective blame for the actions of individuals.
Fair enough.
And I'm sitting there going, so if I'm going to look at that white supremacist over there, he does not speak for all of MAGA or all of America First or all of Republicans or all of white people. That is collectivism. That's essentially a Marxist argument, and I don't believe in that. Same way, I don't believe society is collectively responsible for taking care of that poor guy over there or that drug-addicted person or that criminal over there. We're not responsible for
Hey,
for
wait a
taking care of
minute,
them.
you racist. It was Hillary Clinton that said it takes a village. It takes a village.
Yeah,
come on, we all have to do our part. Barack said, "Come on, we all gotta do our fair share."
It takes a village to share crops. It takes a village to create an economy. It takes a village to do a lot of things. It sure as hell doesn't take a village to get somebody to stop smoking crack. Just put down the damn crack pipe. And that was my argument. Is by I'm willing to have the discussion on your terms. I'm not attacking you from the left. I'm attacking you from the right. We have principles, and by applying those principles to this particular issue, I arrive at this set of conclusions. And your talking points and your conclusions are false because you ditched your principles in the process of trying to arrive at a claim that is convenient for your narrative. The left operates exactly the same.
Yep.
I have a set of I have a set of views, and I'm going to filter the rest of society and everything going on through those set of views. Which, perfect example, the Constitution. I read the Constitution in the text of the Constitution based on what it meant when it was written, rather than the postmodernist view, which is to interpret the Constitution toward via how we look at society today and interpret past actions based on the issues we have today. I can look at something for what it was then while not condoning things they did back then. And there's a difference. And the left is unable to see that dividing line between understanding the reality that existed at a particular point in time versus where we are now. And if you look at, I always argued that the solutions for everything going on in society are in the Constitution, are in those founding principles, are in the methodology of these various studious men that went around the world studying the conglomerate of different cultures and governing bodies and going, these are where we're going to go. We're going to go with the maximum liberty to the individual, and we're going to restrict the government. Not restrict the individual, but restrict the government.
Well, it's the way it's supposed to be.
I think that's the best way to do it. But we're looking at this. I was in college when I confronted this for the first time. I had just got out of the Marine Corps. Of course, in the Marine Corps, there's no subjective view of anything. There is the Marine Corps' view, and you bend to the Marine Corps' view. But I got out, and I'm in college, and I was in a marriage. I just mentioned this on the podcast. I was in a marriage, family, and intimacy psychology course. I had to take a soft psychology course, and it was the dumbest fucking course I ever took in my life. By the beginning of the course, we were discussing gender ideology, gender identity, gender synonymous with sex, and sexual preference or sexuality. By the end of the course, we were using gender to describe all three.
When was this?
This was 2012. 2012. And I'm sitting here going, we just got to a point where we're devolving dialogue. We can't get to a solution because we're spending our time trying to figure out where each other stands on this. And it became a concept. Now, half this class are veterans. Half the class are veterans studying criminal justice and different things that require a psych course. The other half are like feminists. And even the feminists were sitting there going, why did the terms just switch up? We're not able to have a rational dialogue. And all the veterans are sitting here going, what the fuck are we doing right now? This has nothing to do with being able to discuss the actual issues. We're arguing over dialogue now because we can't have a rational discussion. We're constantly trying to view, now we're viewing the text through our own personal experiences when we should be applying the text to experiences, and it's completely ass backwards.
Well, I remember as a kid, my dad used to say to me all the time, the devil can quote scripture to suit his own purpose. And there's two terms when we talk about, and you can apply this to historical documents as well, but there's a term exegesis and eisegesis. And so exegesis, if you are interpreting biblical scripture, exegesis is understanding the language, understanding what certain words meant at the time, and understanding that literary work in a historical context. Eisegesis is when you take your own subjective viewpoint and impart that on your interpretation. For instance, turn the other cheek means to be a pacifist. No, Cupcake, it actually doesn't. No. But, I mean, you can interpret that your way. Again, the devil can quote scripture to suit his own purpose. We can do that to historical documents. People do that all the time with the Constitution. They interpret that the welfare clause, the general welfare clause of the Constitution means something that it doesn't. It means actual welfare. Like, let's just increase the WIC benefits. By the way, I was in, I hate to say it, I was in a Walmart yesterday, and I watched $360-something of WIC payments going into Funyuns, Mountain Dew, cookies. I don't think there was a single healthy snack or food item
They got
in
rid of
that basket.
WIC used to be very, very restrictive into what you could get. It was like you could get cheese, you could get milk, you could get healthy products or whole products that you would use to make a meal.
Yep.
You couldn't get all the junk food and stuff because that's not necessary for the child. It's not necessary for child rearing. And then somewhere along the line, a lot of this stuff started changing, and it was like, no, you could get the bag of Funyuns, and you could get candy, and you could get all this other stuff. And it's like, before you know it, it's like, oh, well, I got my benefits, and I bought a 6-pack of beer. It's like, why does your child need beer?
Exactly.
Well, I mean, we gotta keep them drunk and happy, right? I mean, there is nothing more American than allowing your 7-year-old to crack open a cold one after a hard day at school.
Shit, I would even argue the society was better before we started, cracking down on what parents could do, because then we replaced it with the state telling parents what they were allowed to do.
I want to, because I'm looking at the clock here. We're already at 24 minutes past the hour, so I want to get into this here. I want to talk about the Plastow murder first, and then we're going to get into, in the second half of the hour, we're going to talk about, well, you know what? This first hour, I think, is kind of revolving around sexual deviancy.
Yes.
And the left. It's almost as if the left is just obsessed with sexual deviancy. Oh, that's right, because...
They are.
That's right. All right. So this has not gotten a lot of airplay here, and I cannot get into my freaking X account. So I'm going to ask Juan if he could to pull it up on the screen here. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this, just to the bottom of the hour, and then we're going to talk about the other scheduled topic, which we had, by the way, which is massage parlors. And the massage parlors and the human trafficking issues that are going on right here in the Granite State. So we're going to have that conversation coming up right after the 7:30 break. But Juan, if you could pull up the tweet that came out from Andy, I think it's Ng. I know NG, the Vietnam name is Ng, but if there's an O on the end of it, I don't know how to pronounce that. So I apologize if we're hacking it up. Can you blow that up anymore? Because I can't read that. It's pixelated on my screen here. All right. So a radical Trantifa, that would be the radical LGBTQ LMNOP arm of Antifa activist, has been charged with second-degree murder after allegedly brutally killing... Is that second-degree? Yeah, it is second-degree murder after brutally killing a woman in Plastow, New Hampshire on May 18th. Rhea Jasmine, previously known as David Mark Jasmine, I think it is, allegedly stabbed his wife, Margaret Jasmine, to death in their home. Their young child was present. The wife, a woman, was also transgender identifying. Mr. Jasmine is a far-left activist who was the star of the Ask a Transgender Woman Anything event at the local Plastow Public Library. By the way, if you go on their Twitter feed, they're still very, very proud of that, by the way. They still giving him, Rhea crushed it, evidently, was their accolades being given. He works as a software engineer at Carsus, I think it is, and he was active on social media. If you could, do me a favor, play the video where he's lamenting the hate mail that he's getting in his... do you have that video? It's attached to that tweet. I don't know if that's a screenshot or if you're actually getting that on X. It's a static screenshot. Okay. We're seeing time and time again. And again, correlation not necessarily equaling causation, where you have transgenders that are snapping and they are becoming, in many instances, homicidally violent. And again, this is not a scathing indictment of everybody that identifies as trans, but there is a startling issue right now with people who are identifying as trans that are becoming violent. And it makes me wonder whether or not this has anything to do with the free medication. These hormone blockers and the addition of hormones into a brain that may actually have some issues. At the very least,
it's not even just
dysphoria.
It's not even just the hormone blockers. It's the antidepressant, anti-anxiety drugs have been linked to both depression and anxiety, which is hilarious that they're antidepressant and anti-anxiety drugs, and they cause literally the thing they're supposed to fix. But they've also been linked to psychosis, to suicidal and homicidal ideation. And it's not by a small number, and the FDA knew about this and still approved these drugs for this use. And now you're having a mass amount of people. The further you go into your transition and the more of these drugs you take, the higher likelihood you are to kill yourself or to attempt to kill somebody else or get violent.
So the data there gets a little bit messed up. Some of that's hard to tell about suicide and homicide with it.
Yes.
But there's one thing that's a fact. Hormones are one hell of a drug.
Yes.
When you look at women, you look at them going through their cycle in PMS. I mean, I swear, sometimes I feel like I'm off my rocker.
I'm not touching that one with a 10-foot pole.
My family knows to tell me you're emotional and you're wrong, and I know to go just walk away because I know it's that time. But when you are adding these hormones to somebody, if they have untreated mental illness, that should not be happening. That's actually always been contraindicated because hormones are the most potent drug on earth. And if you haven't treated your depression or anything else, there is no way you're going to be able to get that under control once you start throwing hormones into the mix.
And the combination of the two. And I think that's the most important thing is you're taking synthetic hormones. So your hormone balance is way out of whack. And then on top of it, you're taking these drugs that have a side effect of causing suicidal and homicidal ideation. That's dangerous. So you're already not emotionally stable. You may be suffering from anxiety and depression, and then you have a bad interaction between drugs at the same time. You're setting up a really, really bad situation that could spiral very quickly. And it's the same that I said when we were in the military. You can't take a whole bunch of people with PTSD and then dope them up with stuff that makes it worse and makes the likelihood of getting violent or suicidal make it worse. You're going to get exactly what you're asking for.
Two things here before we continue. Can we, I want to skip this break, if we can do that. Let's go ahead and skip the break, because we do have a caller, Kelly, in Rochester. Kelly, welcome to the program.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hey, Kelly, how are you? Welcome to the program.
Hello.
They work! It works! Yes!
Hi, Kelly.
All right.
It worked.
Hi, Kelly. How are you?
Hi, I just wanted to, good. I just wanted to give a shout out. Thank you so much, Representative Layon, for coming on. I did not know this story at all. And I literally am on X and scrolling, and it comes up, and I read it, and I'm like, oh my God, this is New Hampshire. And I then reposted it and tagged like a whole slew of New Hampshire media and basically said, why has everybody been silent on this? You know, there's one thing that I wanted to bring up. I would love Erica to talk about some of her experiences that she's had recently, going to some events, because I think that's very important. But our New Hampshire Department of Justice, this was one of the comments that was on there, referred to this man as a woman. And then they said, is this a woke Republican administration in New Hampshire? And that just made me sad, because I'm like, what kind of message are we giving from our leadership? And when everybody just stays silent on this. And we know from so many things that have gone on across the country with violent episodes, whether it be in the schools and all of that. And they always, if it is someone that, has transitioned or has any of those issues at all, any gender dysphoria, all of that, they always keep it quiet. And we need to be talking about this and being bold and loud. And I'm just so appreciative that you guys are talking about this tonight. So,
Kelly, let me ask you a question. Did you happen to, in the State House the other day, did you see members of the Kent Strait Coalition with the genital observation police handing out inspection cards in the State House? Were you there when they were there?
Yes, I was there.
Can you
I
tell
did
us
not
a little
engage,
bit more
but
about?
I was there.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what exactly was going on there? Because when I saw that, I mean, my first thought, honestly, was Crocodile Dundee when he goes up and grabs the crotch of the woman. Oh, that's a dude. But what exactly were they doing?
Well, they, of course, it's always, it's a shock and awe. It's always got to be about that. It has to be for, a public relations stunt. They were situated, I think Erica saw them. They were situated outside, not the male restroom, but the female restroom on each side of the doors, with their little hats on, and handing out these little like, cards or pieces of paper that said what they were doing, gender inspectors or whatever, or genital inspectors, ridiculous. But the other piece, there was about, I don't know, I would say 6 of them, maybe 7 of them, and they were singing. They had a full song that they did up, based upon, Erica can tell me now, I'm forgetting the song, and they had it sung to, basically saying that, we are all racist, homophobe, awful human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I always find it interesting that it's never about trying to go into men's spaces. It's never about fighting for trans men to go into men's spaces. It's always about trans women, dudes going into women's spaces. This is just the resurgence of the patriarchy. The Democrats spent like the last 40, 50 years, or at least since the sexual revolution, trying to tear down the patriarchy. And of course, about 10 years, they've done a full reverse, and now the best version of a woman is a dude. I just don't get it. Why do they need to invade your spaces?
Well, that's something that, this has been a topic of conversation.
That's perfect.
Yeah, this has been a conversation or a topic of conversation here for quite a while. You've been fighting for the rights of women, and you've been talking about smashing the patriarchy and how damaging the patriarchy is, and how damaging toxic masculinity has been to your causes. But then a guy can just say, "Yep, you know what? I'm a woman." And again, this isn't. We opened up the show by saying, you guys have memorized thesauruses. You've got all these words for everything. But what you haven't done is really develop and finely tune your critical thinking skills. I would love 833-603-8255. With all respect, I would love to have somebody call me right now on this program and tell me how a man identifying as a woman does not devalue women. How a man participating in female sports and using male musculature, male skeleton, male ability, male strength doesn't damage women. And I will extend every professional courtesy. No humor, no sarcasm. I want you to use, in your own words, explain to me how that makes sense and how that doesn't undermine and devalue women. 833-603-8255. I'm not going to hold my breath because they're never going to call.
I just draw the line at the very simple. I don't care what you do. I don't care how you live your life. I don't care whether you want to wear a dress, whether you want to identify as a woman or not. Where I draw the line is at men and women's sports, men and women's bathrooms. Once you start to encroach upon other people, now I have an issue with it. When you start to encroach upon me and my kids, now I have an issue with it. Up until that point, by all means, identify as, be a friggin' attack helicopter for all I care. Identify as a ninja or velociraptor. I don't give a fuck. But as soon as you start to encroach upon other people, that's where your rights stop.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and this is an issue, too. It's not a matter of asking somebody to show their genitals in a changing room. The problem is you have people in a women's bathroom exposing their penis and balls. Mm-hmm. They are exposing their genitals. And when they're showing that, it's clear that they shouldn't be in a women's changing room.
Yeah. Leah Thomas was doing it. Like Riley Gaines said that when she came up here, that the dude was exposing himself fully intact in the locker room. So what? You put some hair plugs in. You're not a dude. You're still intact, and you're exposing yourself to women in the locker room, and we're supposed to be okay with that and act like it's normal. No, yeah. It's not normal.
And I don't want to sound intersectional in all this, but when it comes down to it, lesbian women are the ones who are hurt worst with all of this. Mm-hmm. Because not only are their spaces being invaded, they're being told that if they don't want to have sex with somebody with a dick, they're a bigot.
Yes.
And when you have women who are, one of the women who is at the dinner, she identifies as a butch lesbian because across the room you can tell she's a lesbian. Mm-hmm. They were screaming at her and saying, "You're a man. Admit it. You're a man.
I have a buddy who works in the fashion industry in LA, and he's dealing with the same thing. He is a effeminate gay black man, and his commentary when they're always like trying to get him to transition. He's like, "I like dudes. It's that simple. I'm not a chick. I just like dudes. Leave it at that. Get out of my fucking face."
So not only is it enforcing stereotypes, it's telling people they need medicines and surgeries in order to live up to a stereotype.
Yeah.
It's just such a harmful idea. They don't tell people that you can love yourself however you are. You can love whoever you want to love. It's not about finding that strength in yourself and your identity, but saying that you're wrong and you need to be fixed. And that's why it's so toxic.
Yeah, up until this push, there was this study that came out. I think it was back in 2015, 2016. Rob Smith, gay influencer on the right, came out with it, and he had shown that the vast majority of people who identified as trans at some point during their high school or puberty or whatever grew out of it and ended up being feminine gay men or masculine gay women. And it was that simple. That it was a phase that they went through because they were trying to negotiate their sexuality and gender norms together. They're trying to figure out where they fit in. And I'm like, so you're taking the most vulnerable point of being a teenager. Your hormones are all over the place. And on top of that, you have a sexuality and you have these stereotypes around the sexuality. So like as soon as you come out, I have a friggin' masculine gay friend. It's like 6'4" black dude, massive, huge, deep voice like Michael Clark Duncan or something. And he's like every time a girl finds out that I'm gay, it's like, oh my God, we could be shopping buddies. He's like, bitch, I don't like to shop. Where did you get that? He's like, I just like guys. I'm not a girl all of a sudden. I'm not like all of a sudden feminine, but there was an expectation that as soon as people found out that he was gay, that he was going to be less masculine or that he was going to be overtly feminine. And the expectation amongst lesbians at the same time was that, oh, you're a lesbian, automatically you're going to be butch. And it was like, so now you're telling that the lesbian that in order to like girls she has to be a dude, and the gay guy in order to like guys he has to be a girl. And that's two things here, and you had mentioned Erica about this, about being a bigot because you as a lesbian don't want to, I forgot exactly how you said it, but
lesbians that don't like dick are discriminating against trans women.
Well, and it's also the same thing too with heterosexual males. If and there are some transgenders, either pre-op or post-op that are pretty damn convincing. Not going to lie. But if I, and
Blair
thankfully,
White is a famous one.
Thankfully, I'm married and I don't have to deal with the dating pool. I don't ever want to go back to that. But if I met somebody on a dating site or whatever, and I went out on a date with that person, and I found out that they were either a pre or a post-op trans, I would not have any interest in that person. And then they would turn around and say, well, you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're a homophobe, you're whatever pejorative you want to throw at. And it's like, no, because as a heterosexual male, I am interested in a person who is capable of having children. I'm interested in a relationship. I'm dating because I'm looking for a long-term partner. Not because I'm looking for casual sex. And even if I were looking for casual sex, I'm not interested in a person who is not physically equipped to be intimate in the manner that I choose to be intimate. That's a personal preference. It doesn't mean that I hate you. I don't care what you do. And I think this is the biggest thing. It's all or nothing with these people. And I've said this before. I don't care who you love. If you are lucky enough to find love in this world, God bless you. Be the best person that you can be. But just do me a favor. Keep it in the bedroom. I'll keep my sex life in the bedroom. I'm sure nobody wants to envision that. So we'll keep everything in the bedroom. Number one. Number two, stop involving children. Because when you involve children, it makes common sense, decent people look at you and go, why? Why is it so necessary that you seek approval and ingratiate yourself with a prepubescent audience? Why are you so obsessed with children and sex? And then the second question, and then I'll shut up, is at what point does the lesbian, gay, bisexual community wash their hands of these people and say they are not representative of us, and we don't want them in our community. Same way that they did that with the pedophiles, because the pedophiles tried to latch themselves on to the LGBT movement and saying, well, we're an alternative lifestyle, so, advocate for us the way that you've advocated for them. And they summarily said, you can go pound sand. We don't want anything to do with you.
That has started. It's called the LGB Courage Coalition. Jamie Reed, some of these other people are part of it, and they are rock stars. They are pushing back and saying that transgender is not the same as being lesbian, gay, or bisexual. It's entirely different. Those categories are defined by sexuality, who you're attracted to. They actually have a beautiful pin. They take the Pride Progress flag, and it's basically surgically removing that triangle from it. And it really just shows that they're ready for a divorce. Transgender can do their own thing, but they need to stop co-opting the lesbian, gay, and bisexual community.
I think the biggest problem is that the spokespeople for these communities, largely for such a long time, are so deep into this gender fluidity that it's almost impossible to steal the narrative back. I'm glad they're trying to do it, because it definitely needs to be done. It's gotten to a point like, I'm all about tolerance. Live your life however you want. Just don't involve me in it in any way, shape, or form. The issue is they're demanding acceptance. And acceptance is not just agreement, but it's advocacy. And I'm not willing to agree or advocate for a lifestyle that I know to ultimately be detrimental. And especially for mental health. And I've watched, unfortunately, too many people end up in hospital on the back end of this. So I'm just looking at this and I'm going, you know what? Normal people, rational people, need to be the spokespersons for damn near every movement. Every movement needs to cast out the extremes. So I'm glad they're doing what they're doing.
Well, activists end up having to double down. That's what you do. When your job has been shouting from the rooftops, you need to keep doing it, or else you need to find a different job. If you look back to the whole progress with lesbians and gays and bisexual and look towards moving towards gay marriage, once that was achieved, the people who are the activist class, who are more interested in activism than they were about the core issues, needed something new. Yeah. And their new was transgender.
Yeah.
But for me, it all comes back to consent. I don't consent to identifying somebody against what's actually true. And it's even bigger that they're saying that it's not a one-word sentence about sex anymore. No should be enough whenever somebody doesn't want to have sex with somebody.
Yeah.
But now there's excuses.
All right, we're getting some music here. That means we are going to take a very, very quick break to reset, and much more of Granite State Live, plus your phone calls and much, much more. 833-603-8255 if you would like to jump in on the conversation. Again, 833-603-8255. Much more coming up right after this. Don't go away.
United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Aciard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aciard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best-looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry. That's AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive. Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
Well, we told you it would be a quick break, and it actually was. And we get a little bit of Hughes Corporation in there with Rock the Boat. One thing that you can take to the bank. We will play you good bump music. Welcome back to a Tuesday edition. It's always a Tuesday edition here at Granite State Live on this 27th day of May 2025. I'm your host, Keith Hansen. Joining me in studio is Julian ACR, the blue-collar conservative and New Hampshire Republican state representative representing Rockingham District 6. That's Derry. Erica Layon, thank you so much again for joining us in studio tonight. All right, so want to get into this topic here. People don't think, and I think when people think about sex trafficking, they think about something really that is in the movies. I don't think people really understand what sex trafficking is, but there is sex trafficking that is happening here in New Hampshire, and specifically down in your neck of the woods as well, too, Derry, Londonderry, and this comes in the form of sex workers in massage parlors.
Yes, this has been a large problem in Derry for a while now. We have it's between 7 and 9 massage parlors that have their front windows papered over with pictures. They don't keep normal hours. And if you watch after hours, occasionally there'll be a U-Haul van or another van that goes up to the back. It gets filled up with women. They get shuffled around the eastern seaboard, move from state to state, and then they bring in a new crop of women who aren't able to leave those massage parlors. They're there to service people who are coming in thinking it's okay. For some reason, they think it's okay to come into a real shady business and pay somebody for sex, and they're doing it. I actually watched a gentleman looked absolutely normal in his 40s and in shorts and a T-shirt, walked up, was about to walk in one of these businesses, turned to the side, saw there was a family. He had his little car alarm, and he walked out because he felt embarrassed about what he was doing. And
these places are still operational right now.
Yes, they are. We've had a few arrests in Derry because the town added some ordinances that they used to crack down on it. One of the problems that we heard was it was only a misdemeanor to have one of these facilities and basically operate a little brothel out of a storefront. You know, one there's actually one right next to Birthright in Derry. How awful is that?
Right next to Birthright.
Right next to Birthright.
Wow.
So you have people who are coming in and having sex with people in these places. Some of the landlords care, some of them don't. And it was only a misdemeanor. So I filed House Bill 405, which was a bill to look at ways to stop storefront sex trafficking. Mm-hmm. For some reason, that phrase really caught on because there were a lot of people that didn't think it was happening. But now they recognize that in some of these parlors and some of these places, people are buying and selling sex from unwilling victims.
Wow.
So this ended up evolving. I had wanted it to be some representatives and some senators to talk about it so that we weren't having special interests and we could figure out what the specifics were. This has turned into a very large group. It has the Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence. It has police. It has some people from the task force. It's become a very large and very regimented study committee, but I'm hopeful that it'll come out with some good results. One of the things that did concern me is they're talking about adding new regulations to massage therapists and Asian bodywork, but they didn't include anybody from those boards. That's all right. We'll make sure that we can hear from them because the last thing I want to do is to make it look like massage therapists are prostitutes because most of them are not. You have some people who are breaking the law and are pretending. Oh, and this kind of goes back to the last segment, just as some people are pretending to be a different gender. Yeah. They're pretending to be a legitimate business, even though they're not. So we're going to figure out how to do that and root it out because it's a travesty.
So tell us exactly what is the scope of it's House Bill 405. Tell us the scope of it, what it seeks to do, and what are the punishments? Because, I mean, to be honest with you, it should be if you are involved in the sex trade, and I don't mean as a sex worker. I mean as somebody who is facilitating, somebody who is actually trafficking these people. If you can, and let's just make a clarification here. if you, let's say, for instance, that, you're you're a shitbag junkie, and your girlfriend maybe, will turn a couple of tricks for some crack money. You give her a ride to go meet a John, congratulations. You are trafficking. That should be a felony. That should be a mandatory minimum 10 years in the slammer felony. What do we have on the books right now that actually punishes this to the degree and to the level of severity that it should be punished as?
So now, once the governor signs this into law, it'll be a felony to have a place that's used for the sex trafficking. It'll be a Class B if you're allowing a place under your control to be used to traffic people. And it'll be a Class A felony, which is the stronger one, if it includes a person under the age of 18 or if it includes compelling another person by force or intimidation. Okay. So some of these rings are taking women's passports. They have all of their papers. If that's not force or intimidation, I don't know what it is.
And if I remember the news story from, I believe it was WMUR, connected one of these massage parlors to a sex trafficking ring in New York and New Jersey, and an incredibly violent one. As a matter of fact, one of the women who was one of the mama-sans who was operating one of these apparently had multiple felonies in New York for Class A and Class B prostitution.
Yes.
That is insane that she even was able to get a place in the first place with her name on it. How do we miss this the first time?
Some people will say it's because we don't have a specific license for massage businesses. I'm not sure if that's the right solution because we don't have for the business, not like a hair salon. A hair salon has a license for that business because you have to look at it too. If you're operating out of your home and you're doing a totally legitimate massage business, do you need to have your home as a licensed facility?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It goes a lot further.
Because there are traveling masseuses and stuff like that as well.
The details are a lot more complex than than a lot of people realize. Yeah. And what you write for people who are already skirting the law and to force them into compliance is going to end up hurting a lot of other people with how they earn their money.
So I am not in favor of heaping more government and more restrictions and more legislation on this. And to be honest with you, I think we're over intellectualizing the issue. Listen, if you've got a facility in your And I guess this would be to every sheriff and every chief of police out there. If you've got a facility that is operating in a domain that has traditionally involved that type of behavior, then put one of your freaking cops out there and surveil the place. That's the bottom line. And if you have any type of suspicion whatsoever, open an investigation. Get the probable cause to stop one of these trucks and figure out what's going on. I'm sure if I follow a U-Haul truck for about a quarter mile, I can get it's pulling a string. I can get PC to make a stop. He's gonna go over the speed limit 2 or 3 miles an hour. He's gonna do something like that. Pull him out of the truck, question him, figure it out, get a freaking search warrant to open up the back of the truck and bust these assholes. Why is it so hard? Are we gonna go through a legislative process for 2 years to get something done? Meanwhile, these women are they're being victimized. That's the bottom line. They're not there willingly.
How we got here to where it's only a misdemeanor. All right, here's me saying...
Am I overreacting?
I don't care. No, I don't think so.
I don't care what consenting adults do, but I care about the human trafficking. I care about the force. I care about the coercion. I care about
But there's the issue, Julian. There's the issue.
Involved with this, and you can't have one without the other, it seems.
The state of Vermont was trying to legalize... I don't know if they did or not. I stopped paying attention to Vermont. I don't give a shit what those people do over there. But they were trying to legalize prostitution because they were saying, well, hey, listen, you know what? It is not the government... under the auspices of being libertarian.
Yeah.
It's not the government's business what two consenting adults do.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. But you're taking into consideration that every sex worker is now engaging in a consensual business transaction with another adult. What you don't realize is that those transactions represent a fraction of what the transactions actually are. Because here's the thing. The law of supply and demand. If I want a 12-year-old boy or a 12-year-old girl, that's going to cost me a shitload more money. So now I'm going to wind up under the auspices of, this is just a consensual relationship. I'm going to be providing those services to the degenerates that want that. Yep. So hey, I'm a heterosexual man. I don't have a girlfriend. I don't have a wife. I just want, some release. Okay. That's probably a 5% of the sex trade that's out there.
And that's the problem.
The other
Yeah.
95%, and of course I'm just making these numbers up, but that just seems like it would make sense. There's more money in illicit sex than there is in legitimate sex.
Of course there is.
And that's where the trafficking comes in.
And that's the problem is everything regarding this. We were just in the last hour, we were talking about this. We were talking about consent. Everything stuck to consent. You cannot give consent if you're being coerced or forced into an action. You cannot give consent if you're not legally able to give consent. And this is the problem is I have an issue with pimps. I have an issue with human trafficking. I have an issue with the bullshit of putting up a storefront saying I'm providing massages and then you're providing these extra services on the back end. Like, just don't lie. Like, why are you lying to me at this point? I feel betrayed because now I have to look. Unfortunately, now you have to look at all these different Asian massage parlors who have similar practices, even if they don't actually engage in the action. They have their windows plastered over, or they're in a shady location, or whatever. And I don't care whether it's a cheap like you just threw this place in cheap in a storefront and put a couple massage tables in it. But now I have to question every massage parlor.
Well, and now so many are being stereotyped as offering these sexual services. That's a huge problem. That's why we need to make sure that we're not saying that every massage parlor does this, but we're finding where that line is and separating it out. And this past week, there actually was a stabbing, a fatal stabbing by one of these parlors in Derry. There was a U-Haul truck involved. The man's name is Chinese, and he was stabbed at 4 Peabody Annex, which has one of these parlors that's listed on some of these sites.
How many of these facilities are currently operating, and where are they concentrated?
I believe there's 9 operating in Derry. There are some in other towns, but for some reason they've seemed to gravitate towards my town, which has been a problem.
Is there a particular reason why?
I think it's easy. I think it's a hub. It's a hub. It's right off the highway. It's just south of Manchester, close to the airport. It's very easy to get in and out without hitting other areas.
This is yeah.
I'd like to be known for something else, but until then, we need to make sure that we can crack down on this and making sure that consent.
Well,
rules.
I think you're I think you're on the right track here, and we're gonna continue this conversation because this is something that absolutely needs to be stopped. And for those of you who are against this whole sanctuary the sanctuary state issue, this is something that ties directly in with this because many of these people that are involved in this. And more than happy to explain how I know this. But from a law enforcement perspective, I know this. Many of these people are not here legally, and that's why they get exploited because
100%.
they don't have any place to go and they're afraid of being deported.
100%.
So it's a huge issue. Erica Layon, Republican State Representative representing Rockingham District 6. I want to thank you so much for being on the program. We're going to get you back on. We're going to continue to follow this, and God willing, we can make a difference in this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on today.
All right, thank you. We're going to take a very, very quick break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by the one, the only, Ann Vandersteel. You're not going to want to miss this. Much more Granite State Live coming up. Don't go away.
United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Aciard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aciard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at augustalawncareservices.com/Londonderry That's AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry.
Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GraniteRock.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. But we're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it. And we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive.
Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
I don't know how I wound up getting this song twice. I haven't heard this song in years. I was driving up here today, and it was on Sirius XM, and now I'm listening to Casey and the Sunshine Band for the second time. That song for the second time in one day.
To be honest, I thought it would have been more appropriate to have "Dude Looks Like a Lady."
That actually would be. Yeah. It absolutely would be.
I can't watch Miss Doubtfire in the context like today the way I could when I was a kid when it came out. Now I look at it, I'm like, oh, this is bad.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of how many movies that are out there that involve remember the Bosom Buddies? Mm-hmm. You know, that was a Tom Hanks. I mean, that was. Well, I guess maybe that's appropriate, isn't it? That's a head scratcher right there. Welcome back to a Tuesday, the 27th day of May edition of Granite State Live. Great to have you along on this Tuesday evening. I'm your host, Keith Hansen, the unapologetic contrarian conservative, never apologizing for my toxic white masculinity, never apologizing for being heavily armed, never apologizing for my Christian faith.
And I'm your co-host, Julian ACR, the blue collar intellectual. All right, I'm ready to shake some shit up and piss some people off. Let's do it.
All right, and we had such a good conversation with our first hour guest, New Hampshire Republican State Representative Erica Layon, that we said, hey, you know what? Stick around. Stick around. We'll stir the pot, as they say.
I'm glad to stick around, and I actually have some background that might be relevant in the second hour, too.
All right. So, we're talking about, obviously sex trafficking. That's become a hot button topic here. And you can't have a conversation about sex trafficking without talking about kidnapping. Now, sometimes it's willing. Some people are willing participants in this, and other times people are kidnapped. People, kids. Okay, so your kids are playing. I say it's probably every parent's worst fear. Your children are outside playing, and then you're expecting. Well, actually, I don't think kids play anymore outside. They're inside on TikTok. But your kid goes missing, okay? And where is your child? And if your child, never comes back, parents always want that closure. No parent ever wants to find out that their child has been murdered. And I feel bad for the parents, certainly who find out that their children have been murdered. But I'm also, I feel for the parents who spend years, decades. For those of us, who are familiar with the case, Maura Murray, perfect example here in New Hampshire. I think it's 20 years that that case has been going on. The chief of police in the former town, Jeff Williams, I mean, a lot of people, looked at Jeff and said, hey, this guy knew a lot more than what he was talking about or what he had ever made public. Jeff died several years ago, 2 years ago, I think it was now. So, that case may never be solved. And Maura Murray's family may never have closure.
As a parent, this is my this is my biggest fear, is because I don't remember it being this bad when I was younger. I mean, I remember the simple, like, don't accept candy from strangers, don't talk to strangers, don't get in a white panel van or random people with mustaches and flannels. All right, so, but it's gotten to the point where I don't know if it's just that it wasn't happening to the degree that it is, or that the information now is available and now we're aware of it and it's no longer able to be hidden because we live in the information age.
So here's the question, Julian. What happens if the people in the white paneled van are carrying state identification? What happens when your kids become part of the system? And is there, and people ask about this all the time, is there literally a state-sanctioned kidnapping industry? What happens to your children?
I don't know.
If, God forbid, they ever wind up becoming wards of the state. Now, I have been very public about this. One of the things, there are two reasons that I moved to New Hampshire in 2015. One was to host the morning show at WNTK and WUVR, and the other was to run as the director of a 28-bed juvenile residential facility. And so these kids were wards of the state. I lasted a year in that contract because I was so disgusted by what I saw. And I will tell you, these kids, there is such a profit motivation to keep kids in the system. So throughout my years as a broadcaster, and I have spoken with dozens, probably hundreds of parents who have said, listen, I used to run juvenile boot camp programs, like legit juvenile boot camp programs. I ran this facility in New Hampshire, and people have come to me and said, listen, my child is an absolute terror. What do I do? Do I do a CHINS? Do I a child in need of supervision, or a PINS, a person in need of supervision? Do I get my kid into a residential home? And the one thing that I have said to parents is, if you can possibly bear it, do whatever you have to do to keep your child at home, because once the state gets a hold of them, you will never get your child back.
And we've
because
seen it
they
across the country.
are money.
And
they
we've
are
seen
money.
We've seen it across the country. We've seen it in different states. It's almost like every state has horror stories of these type of situations happening, whether it's delinquent children, or whether it's just children taken into the system via foster care or whatever, taken out of the parents' control. And it's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying.
There's so much focus on the terrible cases like what happened with Harmony Montgomery that people don't realize the harm that comes when a child who's been in a great family relationship gets into the system because their mom yells at him and yells at him to get out of the road because a car's coming.
Yeah.
That has literally led to an interaction in New Hampshire.
God.
And at what point, I mean, where are the parents' rights? I mean, we don't have parents' rights, right? Because we have to have a piece of legislation originating in Concord to give parents rights, the Parental Bill of Rights. For the love of God, they're your children. Fight for them.
Parental rights should be the default, not something you have to fight for. And they used to be the default. I don't know when it was that we all of a sudden expected the state to do our parenting for us. Like, I remember teachers and educators used to bend over backwards begging parents to be involved in students' education. Now we're at a point, and in the average everyday lives of their students, and now we're at the point where they're actually doing the exact opposite. And now we're in this endless spiral of continuing down a path of absolute degradation.
Well, there's the whole appeal to experts because everybody says, oh, it's not about our families. Let's talk to a psychotherapist. Let's talk to this person. Let's talk to this expert, instead of looking at the actual family unit. And the more that you start looking at people outside of the family, the more that the family disintegrates.
Especially when these professionals don't have kids.
I'm glad that you brought up the Harmony Montgomery thing, because Harmony Montgomery's mother, and I use that term very, very loosely, just wound up getting a $2.2 million settlement out of that.
And what was she doing on social media?
Oh, she's smoking weed on social media. She's blazing up the blunts, yo, because she just got the payday, kids. I'm telling you right now, she's going to be dead of a drug overdose in 6 months. That's my guarantee.
absolutely disgusting. This is, I remember, I don't know, maybe.
And it's your tax dollars, kids. I know. There's no income tax here, but that's where the state revenue is going to wind up going. It's going to wind up paying people to support their drug habits.
I don't remember being that old. I remember a day when we didn't, record everything that we did, especially bad shit. Yeah. But now people are proud of their
degeneracy. They're proud of their degeneracy. They put their degeneracy on full public display on social media, Instagram and TikTok and all that. Before I get too fired up about that, I want to introduce our guest, co-founder of American Made Foundation. She was the host of Steel Truth and is considered a thought leader and a trailblazer in new media. And we've had the opportunity to mingle a couple times at some national events like Clay Clark's Restore America, and Vandersteel joining us on video. And great to see you again. It's been a while, but thanks so much for jumping on this Tuesday evening.
Yeah, Keith, Julian, great to see you. And it's great to be a part of your show tonight. I mean, this is a topic that is near and dear to our hearts because, let's face it, children are the future. And if we don't get control of our future, in other words, if we don't take responsibility for those that we brought into this world, I mean, God is really clear on this one to me. He gave us dominion over the earth and he asked us to go forth and multiply. And yes, I'm simplifying the Bible in Genesis. However, it really is that simple. That's the basic foundational law book. And what we're seeing and what you're talking about with this show, and I know that the publicist had sent me an article talking about the massage parlors. You all were talking about it. Here's something for hypocrisy on all this, right? When you have a New Hampshire massage parlor, and by the way, Florida is not immune from this. There has been dozens and dozens and dozens of massage parlors down here. Robert Kraft, maybe somebody whose name sounds familiar to you all up there.
Bob Kraft getting handies down there, and nobody cares. It's just he
got caught up in that Jupiter bust over the Little Lotus or whatever it was called. I can't remember it, but when you have a massage parlor investigation in your beautiful state, which I love, I visit every summer. You have weeks of surveillance, right? You have search warrants. You have due process. And again, this despite the fact that business wasn't even licensed, right? They were already breaking the law in your state. But then you can have CPS, Child Protective Services, literally based on an anonymous tip, like a mandated reporter, maybe a doctor or a teacher, right? Somebody or clergy, mandated reporter that sees a bruise on little Johnny's arms. And sometimes not even proof, right? In the case of the Rivera family, who we are, up in Massachusetts with, shooting a film called Taken, State-Sanctioned Kidnapping. It's all about CPS. And we're going to drop a federal lawsuit because it's going to hammer Massachusetts and Texas on the Rivera family case. But if you get an anonymous tip, right, with really no corroboration at all, and CPS now can enter a family's home and take their children, like you said, in that white panel van, just kind of pull up. They can seize your children without a warrant, often without a hearing, and often without the ability to verify any of the credibility of the report. You've got a problem. I mean, this is not America. We have Constitution and we have due process. And clearly they just threw that out the window when they formed these agencies. So I see a lot of this reining in. They're trying to backpedal their way in now. And thank God for the overturning of the Chevron doctrine. But we still have a lot more work to do. And I think President Trump is trying to get this done through some recent executive orders that he's published, 14215 and 219, to kind of get this bureaucracy under control. But, the states still have to fall in line. And there's a lot of money that follows this, right? That Title IV funding, $9.8 billion coming out of the Social Security Administration under Secretary Kennedy's Organization of Health and Human Services. We got to rein this in because that's the incentive right there to destroy families and not actually keep them together.
I think there was a sweet spot where all this started, where the intention was, hold up, we don't want kids in abusive families where they're being hurt and there's danger to the child, right? So we're going to give it was sort of this methodology, and it's the same argument that we hear made towards red flag laws, right? We're going to go in, we're going to stop the dangerous thing from happening, and then we're going to deal with the due process later. But here's the downside, is you're creating a system that is incentivized to look at due process as a hindrance rather than a necessary thing that you have to go through in order to make sure that you're not doing more harm than good. And when it comes to this particular incident or this system specifically, I see it happen more often than not that we're actually incentivizing bad behavior and the results don't match the intent. And now the system is actually self-perpetuating.
And are you by chance at all familiar with J.R. Hole, the state representative in New Hampshire, who had CPS after his children because of his response to COVID?
No, but that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
no, I'm not familiar with that story. Wow.
Yeah, that was, and I just reached out to him. Actually, I would love to get him on because I mean, even a ranking lawmaker is not exempt from being targeted from these people. Mm-hmm. And I don't think
neither is the FBI. Neither is the FBI. We spoke to a former FBI agent. Same thing in Massachusetts, targeted by CPS, lost her children. And in fact, we were going to have her in our documentary. She was slated to come and interview on Wednesday last week, but at the last minute canceled because she got a tip and her daughter's been missing for 10 years. So, I mean, she's lost her daughter in the system. And, this is something that she hasn't given up on. I mean, the heartbreak, the heartache, and the just a total, just destruction that occurs because like the ATF, like all these agencies that think they're God, when these unelected appointed bureaucrats get a little bit of drunk on power, this is the result. And then, of course, the big gasoline on the flame is the money, the billions of dollars that come in through the system, and then all of the parasitic cottage industries that spring up around it. I mean, we're talking $80 billion a year, 500,000 children in foster care homes. They're in the system right now. 10,000 in the state of Massachusetts is probably somewhere between 6 and 8 in New Hampshire. It's insane what is happening. It's totally insane.
And with interstate compacts now, you have kids that are being taken out of their homes in Vermont, being shipped over to New Hampshire or vice versa. You've got kids in Massachusetts that are coming up because it's all based on available beds. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, we had a 28-bed facility, and there were 12 heads for every available bed. Wow. And then you had, based on whether it was acute or subacute, they would classify kids based upon their behavioral issues and their own needs as acute or subacute. But subacute was $560 a day. My facility was, the state was getting billed, I think it was about $370 per day. So you do the math. And then, of course, there's additional money coming in from U.S. Department of Agriculture for breakfast and for lunch and everything else like that. So if you're feeding these kids breakfast, if you're feeding them lunch, then you're getting X number of dollars per head per day. So you keep your costs low, you maximize your profit potential. But $370 a day times 28 heads times 365, you do the math. I mean, that is a license to print money right there. And if let's assume that one kid actually leaves, we would take our behavioral issues and we'd ship them down to Sununu Youth Services Center. They didn't want to go there, no surprise. But, as soon as there was an available bed, there would be, a laundry list of kids who were now having that bed potentially earmarked for them. That's big bucks.
And then on top of it, you got to take into account the fact that throughout the interstate compacts and getting shifted around from one facility in one state to another facility in another state, we have kids that have tens of thousands throughout the country that have gone missing. Just missing. Throughout the system, they just disappeared. All of a sudden, they're no longer on anybody's rolls. They're not checked in any facilities. And you can't find them aged out, living their lives somewhere. They're just gone.
And this is a two-part issue. You have the issue on the funding, but you also have the issue about which children end up in the system. Are these just children who are being abused at home? Or are they ones who there's a disagreement on the parenting style? And more, I see the ones where the children are being abused aren't pursued, either because those parents can flex their rights, and because the parents who just have a different parenting style are trusting the government and don't bring in a lawyer and don't assert their rights because they think if that happens, their children are going to be taken. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things that we've been pushing back in the legislature is trying to avoid making it even easier to take children from good parents, but also the financial issues because and your group's brought up the Title 4E funding. That's a huge issue because we get a lot of federal dollars to not just match, but double, triple, quadruple the money we're spending in state. I filed a bill this year in order to get a detailed annual report on the cost incurred by the DCYF to get it each year and to get all the positions, get all of this information. It was summarily killed by the former chairman of the Child and Family Law Committee.
Damn.
Doesn't that just tell you everything you need to know right there? They
does.
Don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to be held accountable. And this is where, this is why American Made Action, I'm going to give a little plug here for what we're doing because we have a C4, 501c4, And what we're doing is we've created an organization that it's two parts. We have the Department of Government Accountability, which is a private entity, and it's the people. And the people are now using notices and affidavits. So if they've been a victim of the system, they can file an affidavit. And we already have them filled out on our website. So it's really point, click, and it sends off to the respective parties that need to receive this. But then we also have our United Law Coalition, which is about 1,000 attorneys, including judges that have come out of retirement, that understand just how evil this system is and want to support, federal lawsuits. But as we go after these unconstitutional agencies that are wielding power and money that, excuse me, they should have no business doing. Because once again, when you look at CPS operating as a federally funded trafficking system, for instance, and again, I'm going to reflect back on what former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo published in the yearly Department of State Trafficking in Persons report. Every year, the Secretary of State's office publishes. It's a federal report. It looks globally at human trafficking. Right in the very beginning of that publication, Mike Pompeo's group pointed out that in the United States, not only were the largest consumers of child trafficking and porn and et cetera, but the majority of the children that are in the child trafficking system are coming right out of foster care. So they'll tell you this, but then what they don't want is accountability when the funding, like $9.8 billion in Title IV funding from last year is now in the system. It's going to foster care maintenance, adoption assistance, guardianship assistance. They have foster youth programs and training and administration. But again, where does it talk about how they're trying to work to keep the families together? It's all of it's parasitic cottage industries that are coming out of those different organizations that are receiving billions and hundreds of millions of dollars. There's nothing really designed to keep the family together. And, this is where, the church, the clergy, the community organizations, and your next door neighbors and family should come into play. General Flynn always says local action has a national impact. Well, there was a time in our country when you were the blacksmith and you got called to go to Congress, somebody else in the family or your neighbor came over and ran your business for you to keep food on the table for your family while you went and served your country. We don't do that anymore. Our entire mentality has changed. And we've become, sort of like they say from that movie, A Few Good Men, fast food Persian bazaar, sort of like get it done now. And we don't care about the guy next to us. We have got to come back to that community-centered aspect where if there's a crisis going on in your neighborhood, we should help step in. And we should look for the family members to come and support that family. And if there is none, then the community needs to come together. Because depending on the state is resulting in catastrophe after catastrophe, children going missing. And while the government will admit to 330,000 missing kids, I submit to you it's far more than that. It's way more than that. It's at least 1 million. And I can tell you that because I've seen the kids coming over the border. This entire business of human trafficking and child trafficking is worth billions, hundreds of billions of dollars here in the country. And then, of course, globally. And it's all coming out. We're learning about the pedophile elites and all of this stuff. It's coming out. But the fact that we have a system that's supposed to be localized and yet the money's coming from the federal government, it's only going to exploit the children. It's never going to really result in something positive. And on one last note, I'll land the plane on this. I was speaking to somebody out of Massachusetts who does a lot of work in the CPS foster care world. And he told me, he said, Ann, do you know that only 3% of the children, meaning 97% of the kids in foster care, legally meet a threshold where they should be taken from a family? 97%.
Not surprised.
So it's disgusting when you think 3% of the kids in there really are in crisis and they don't have somewhere else to go. But 97% of them, it's just something trumped up. That tells you it's all about the Benjamins. And We've got to end that.
I'm so glad you got into that because that at the core of that is a very simple thing that I have criticized my fellow Republicans and conservatives for a long time, which is if you don't want the government to step in these in conglomerate and working with these non-governmental institutions, you need to step up. We can no longer proselytize to each other and safely inside of our four walls. We need to get out in our communities and build the infrastructure privately to address these issues within communities without having to cry for government, because government begets more government, begets more government, begets more government, and the institutions themselves become self-perpetuating.
But I think this is an issue here where, I mean, we can self-police all we want to, but the bottom line is that the more that you self-police and the more, at least ostensibly, you are being proactive with your children, you're actually giving CPS more reason to come after you. And I think that's the scary thing. The more involved that you are, the more likely you are to draw attention to yourself. If you're just allowing your kid to go off and go to school and get indoctrinated with DEI and all this leftist rhetoric, then you know what? You're being a good parent. But if you're standing up for the rights of your children, if you're standing up against DEI, if you're standing up for your Christian family, then you're calling unnecessary attention on yourself and your family, and you're putting yourself at risk. That's the biggest concern here. Would you agree with that, Ann?
Oh, absolutely. Again, it's I live it every single day on social media, right? You put yourself out there and you bring what you believe to be the truth to the forefront. Those that don't want the truth, Congress, for instance, they don't want to fix a broken system because they've all learned how to profit off it, and they've got lobbyists that make sure they don't fix it and vote a certain way, keep borders open, keep the money flowing through Title 4E. It's just, it's perpetuating itself because it keeps them in a job and it keeps them in a position to have a problem to campaign on, right? Another thing that they could put a flag in the ground, I'm going to go fix this, and then it never gets fixed. And so, and again, this is just, wash, rinse, repeat. And the people that suffer the most are the families and the children. That's the people that are funding the system, you and me, the taxpayer. When you are funding this system and you finally understand that the cycle is going from your wallet and your labor based on Title 26, which was never codified into positive law, i.e. the income tax code, and you've had many people come forward from the IRS telling you there is no law that says you have to pay taxes on your wages, your personal income. That's a bunch of malarkey. When you understand that you've been giving money to a system that is now paid to attack you and look for the fly in the ointment in every single thing you do, and completely disrespect your natural, unalienable God-given rights, which are protected in the Bill of Rights in our Constitution. As Maureen Steele, my co-founder of American Made, always says, these are the greatest love letters ever written. Was our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution, and they violate it all the time because they just they disregard it completely. So I'm
sitting here grinning like a Cheshire cat because you just said something that I never hear anybody say, and you got it correct. It's not inalienable. It's unalienable rights, and there is a big difference. Look it up in Black's Law Dictionary between inalienable and unalienable.
On the nose.
Can I get you to stick around through? Do you have time to join us into the second half?
I'm happy to. That'd be great.
Great, because I want to continue this conversation because I see some startling comparisons here. I don't know, like I think the rest of people, I'm kind of wired to see similarities and patterns, and I'm seeing some patterns developing here that are a little bit concerning, I should say, and this deals with the lack of due process and the the extra constitutionality, it seems, of a lot of these actions. I know we do have to take a very, very quick break. So Ann Vandersteel is joining us, co-founder of American Made Foundation and co-host of Your Voice America. And we're going to make sure that on the lower third, we're going to get your social media links up so people can follow you. You are watching the Tuesday edition of Granite State Live on this Tuesday, the 27th day of May, 2025. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, more with Ann Vandersteel. We're going to take a deeper look at this issue. Again, this is state-sanctioned, state-sponsored kidnapping, and it's real. This is not speculation. This is not conjecture. This is happening all across the country. And if you think it's not happening here in the Granite State, you are delusional. Much more Granite State Live coming up right after this. Don't go away.
If you love camping, but don't love sleeping on the ground, then you might be interested in staying in our Bear Hill cabins. Here, deep in the middle of a state park forest, you can be fully immersed in nature while having the comforts of a furnished cabin to spend your nights. The Bear Hill cabins are located within Bear Brook State Park in Allenstown, New Hampshire, roughly 5 miles away from the main campground. There are currently 8 cabins available for reservation, each of which sleeps between 4 and 6 people. Inside each cabin, you'll find bunk beds, futon pillow couch, and a table and chairs. Clear vinyl windows can be opened or closed from the outside, and a fire ring and picnic table are just a few steps away from the front porch. A single, family-style bathhouse is the only facility available, along with a few additional porta potties. Bear Hill Pond is just a short distance from the cabins and can be used for boating or fishing. There is a small beach area which you can walk or drive to for launching a boat or wading into the water. In the years to come, New Hampshire State Parks will continue to expand the number of cabins being offered at Bear Hill. During the fall and spring months, these cabins are especially appealing since temperatures fluctuate so drastically in the evenings. Families may also find this setup quite convenient since it doesn't involve wrestling with an oversized tent and lugging additional gear. This may result in more quality time that you can spend together around the campfire. To make a reservation, visit nhstateparks.org.
Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GraniteRock.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. But we're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it. And we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry. That's AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry.
United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Aceyard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aceyard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble. Manchester man sentenced to prison for killing 7-year-old son.
I gotta ask. I mean, are you going through this disco? What is it with you and disco tonight? I mean, like you're like a wannabe Steve Rubell here. It's like, all right, welcome to the Studio 54 edition of Granite State Live tonight, where you're getting your dose of conservative rhetoric and. All right, just do me a favor, please. No Gloria Gaynor. All right, just no Gloria Gaynor. He's going to pull it up. You watch. That's what we're going to end the show with. All right, welcome back to Granite State Live. Phone lines are open, 833-603-8255 if you would like to be a part of the program. And I'm interested, I'd like to hear from parents or from people that have had personal firsthand experiences with Child Protective Services and kind of what, especially those who, these things kind of came out of the blue. Did you find CPS on your doorstep? You can always talk to us with anonymity. We're not going to disclose who you are or anything else like that. We don't want to create a problem for you, but we are interested in hearing from people that have had issues with this in the past. Joining us via video, Ann Vandersteel. Many of you are familiar with her media. She is the former president and co-host of Your Voice America. She's a co-founder of America Made Foundation and was the host of Steel Truth. She joins us on video again. Ann, thank you so much for jumping on this Tuesday, and also thank you for sticking around into the fourth segment of Granite State Live.
My honor, my pleasure. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen.
So one of the things that I alluded to earlier was I'm seeing some ominous parallels here. Red flag laws. Red flag laws exist, and it's very similar to a protective order. You have a protective order, and many people, not only just women but men as well too, will get protective orders against batshit crazy exes and spouses and boyfriends and girlfriends and all that. There is a mechanism. There's a legal order that is granted based upon the veracity of the petition that is put forth. Oftentimes there is action that is taken, albeit limited action, to protect the perceived victim until a hearing can go forward. In the case of red flag laws, I'm terrified that somebody is going to wind up harming themselves or somebody else. They've got a firearm, and so this individual's firearms are now taken. And somehow, some way, you have even Republicans that are able to justify this kind of behavior and saying, well, the potential risk to not only to the individual but also to the public at large, somehow now warrants this suspension of due process or this extra constitutional behavior where we can just bypass a person's constitutional rights to due process and say, well, we have to act first and then we can ask questions later. And I'm seeing this now in the case of red flag laws. I'm seeing this in the case of protective orders, marital or domestic restraining orders. And now, I'm certainly seeing this in the case of Child Protective Services, where in the interest of protecting the child, we have to act, and we have to act now. We can't do a veracity check on the claim. We just have to get it done now. And that's a little bit frightening, because what is the mechanism by which a parent's rights or a guardian's rights are preserved? If there's an issue, and clearly there is, I mean, we're dealing with this Harmony Montgomery case right here in New Hampshire now, which is just an absolute smoldering dumpster fire. But if a child is legitimately at risk, then we have to have a mechanism to protect that child. But this can't be something that can be weaponized or can become a tool for vindictive politicians or even vindictive exes. And we've seen that many times. Ex-husbands, ex-wives, or boyfriends or girlfriends, they're pissed off at the other parent, so now they drop an anonymous dime to CPS. Next thing you know, you've got investigators on your doorstep. Where are the mechanisms of protection, and what is the answer to preserving the rights of the parents but protecting the children as well?
Well, in my humble opinion, the anonymous reporter, that needs to go bye-bye. I'm sorry, if you are a teacher or clergy or pediatrician, as in the case with the Rivera family, obviously we know who he is, but they shouldn't get that protection because you are making a claim that is, I mean, frankly, that's just a horrific claim to say that a parent is violating their child or harming their child in any way, shape, or form. So that person needs to be not held behind the veil of secrecy. They need to be, publicly recognized as this is the accuser, just like you get to face your accuser. This is constitutionally protected. You should be able to face your accuser. And, if you're going to court with a jury of your peers, these family law courts, which again are not constitutional whatsoever. You're basically up against it with judge, jury, and executioner, and you have no help. You don't have anybody to bounce anything off of. You have no way to present your evidence and have somebody else weigh in on this. You have a trio of people up there that are, again, profiting off that Title IV-E funding. So your due process violations right out the window. But again, the threshold, like you said, the low evidentiary standards. And then you layer the fact that the person who is making these claims, leveling them, is held anonymously. So you can't face them and you can't go out and say, well, let me see if there's more people that can corroborate your story. You don't even know where to turn. This is the kind of stuff that weaponizes these false claims, these petitions against people. And that's the same thing that they do with red flag. So you're absolutely correct. We are seeing a systematic erosion of our constitutionally protected, God-given, unalienable rights in every aspect of what has already been protected by the Constitution. Our First Amendment, right? They've silenced us. Although I have to say, we've just filed an amicus brief in a Fick versus Facebook case that we believe will be taken up by the Supreme Court, and we should restore our free speech here shortly, I would hope. But the Second Amendment is continually under attack, and they're going to use red flag. Even Pam Bondi, one of the first things she talked about with President Trump was some variation of red flag laws. I mean, knock me over with a feather, but I didn't vote for that. And then you go into the parental rights and the parental alienation and the due process. It is a systematic, consistent ignorance, we should say, not ignorance, ignorance of our God-given unalienable rights. And it has to stop, because we don't have a country. We don't have a republic under the current regime and the way things are being operated. It's just not, it's not right. We've got to restore and reset. And I'm hopeful with Ed Martin in the DOJ that we're going to start to see some of that. But right now, what I'm seeing happen is very disconcerting, which is why the people have to step up, which is why DOJA exists, Department of Government Accountability, why United Law Coalition exists. We, the people, have to come together from the legal side and the lawful side, and we're going to single out those in the system that are taking away our unalienable rights.
So I just got a text message from a viewer, and it was just, but if you remove the anonymity from reporting, that now you're opening that person up to retribution. Well, here's the thing: there are already witness tampering laws on the books. So I would look at that and say, you know what, that's invalid. If I think what it would do is it would eliminate the malicious, baseless, vindictive allegations. Correct. But if it's a legitimate concern and it's from a mandated reporter, there are already laws on the books that would prevent the parents, and it's not going to prevent, but it would penalize if a parent chose to go after or to harass or to contact that individual. Hey, why did you do this? So on and so forth. There's going to be penalties for that. So I think that's I understand the concern, but I would downplay that as being really an issue, because there are mechanisms in place to prevent witness tampering to begin with.
So in New Hampshire, in New Hampshire, we actually have a bill, House Bill 243, which would make it so it's a misdemeanor in order to file a false report to CPS. This is something we've been trying for several years. It would make it so that they could write down the name and address of the person, but did not require it. We've been fighting years to make this happen. I hope that this is the year that the Senate actually passes it. But right now, there is no consequence for filing a malicious report to CPS.
And that's wrong. I mean, that's just simply wrong. If I decide because I don't like the blouse you're wearing, and I said, I call up and I report you as, harming your children because I just personally didn't like your blouse or something crazy, I shouldn't be protected from leveling a malicious accusation like that, which could result in you having your kids taken away from you. And again, the incentive to keep them away from you is in the millions of dollars. So, I will destroy your life, destroy your children, and very, very likely put your children at risk into some sort of child trafficking situation, all because I didn't like you and all because I can be protected. That is a very major accusation for me to wage against somebody and use it maliciously. I just don't see how I should be protected. I should not be able to remain anonymous. If I'm going to accuse you, you have the right to face me, the accuser. I just believe in that wholeheartedly.
Well, I mean, I've had people who don't like my media who have said to me, I can't wait until New Hampshire has a red flag law because I'm going to get your guns taken away from you.
Right.
And, I've had conversations with my local chief of police saying, first of all, if you get a red flag about me, first of all, don't be the guy that comes to my doorstep, because that's not a hill you want to die on, first of all. And second of all, you can guarantee that it's malicious, because it's going to wind up being somebody who doesn't like me because of what I'm saying. Trust me, I train police officers for a living. I'm not a threat. But I will be a threat if you come and try to deprive me of my property without due process or accuse me of a crime of which I am not guilty. If I'm wrong, listen, I'll be the first one to say, hey, take me, okay, because I screwed up, mea culpa. But don't try to deprive me of my property because you don't like something that I say.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I don't think you can make it any more clear than that. I mean, that's, again, this goes right back to the Bible. So I do believe that, when our founding fathers came here to establish this second covenant nation, it was really to, bring to life on paper, on parchment, exactly what God intended for this country. And the first 10 amendments is all we ever really needed between the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and that Bill of Rights. Everything after that is another, attempt to strip us from our sovereignty. And we could talk about that till we're blue in the face. And I'm not going to derail the conversation over there, but it is very, very simple and very fundamental. And yet the government will try to make it extremely complicated with their rules, codes, and statutes. And really, basically, stuff made up. Legal fiction is stuff made up. We have strayed from the essence of what our founding fathers wanted. They wrote the Constitution in plain English for the plain English speaking man or woman to interpret it and understand how they could defend themselves from a government that we created to help govern us. We give them the consent. And I never gave CPS consent to come and take my children in a time of crisis. I never gave my consent to even form an agency that is nowhere, listed in this Constitution. Agencies have gone from being an advisory sort of an organization to one where they have massive power, or let me say, we tacitly give them power. I don't recognize that power anymore in these institutions because I know them to be absolutely out of control and rogue. They're not nowhere near protecting the rights of my children or me, or are they even helpful for this matter? And I could list every single agency, and we could start with COVID, right? We could talk about that all day long for weeks on end, all the ways they violated our rights. So we have got to, we've got to wrestle with the notion that this agency government isn't one of the people, and we have got to figure out how we can reduce it, eliminate it. And I think President Trump did make a precedent-setting move when he eliminated the Department of Education, thanks to Linda McMahon.
I think that's a keynote that I want to get to is this has been one of the banes of my existence dealing with the more neocon establishmentarian Republican is this failed idea that we think that we can operate the institutions better than the left, therefore we shouldn't dismantle them and take away their power and their authority. You can't. They have marched through the institutions for 100 years. One, these institutions are not constitutional. They've exercised extra-constitutional means for the past 100 years, and they're so entrenched in our daily lives that we can't do anything, say anything, or conduct our lives without interference, regulation, or taxation. And at this point, I'm completely done with it. And I always make this, because I tie everything back to black issues because I spend so much time arguing with black intermediaries on the left. I constantly say, when have these institutions served a positive role in your daily lives? Whether it's Waco, whether it's Ruby Ridge, it doesn't matter. All of these agencies have been corrupt from their beginning because if you look at a lot of them, especially like the FBI, CIA, they had corrupt upcomings in the first place. So let's dismantle them. I'm sorry, Trump administration. I like you, Trump, but a lot of the people that you hired think that they can revamp these agencies, and they can't. They cannot be revamped. They're far gone. We don't run them. Stop trying to reinvent the wheel and just get rid of them. Clean house.
This is something we deal with. So we deal with this in Concord constantly. We have a group of Republicans that think that the problem with the agencies is we haven't given them enough power, and we need to give them more power. There was a bill that almost steamrolled right through child and family law. It steamrolled through the whole Senate. They would have removed the mens rea from child endangerment. It would have removed the word purposefully for violating the duty of care. This was on the fast track to be passed and to become law. It even gets worse. If you were to sign a child up for Little League, that would be a felony. But quite simply, they feel that we haven't given the agencies enough power, and that's the problem. And I fundamentally disagree with that. Mm-hmm. We've given them too much without enough oversight and without enough constraints. I'm actually the head person from the House in our Joint Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules. So that mouthful means that we approve all of the rules from the agencies. We haven't seen any from DCYF because they don't do theirs through rulemaking anymore. It's all done through memorandums through the Department of Justice.
Oh boy,
it's a big problem.
Well, I have to ask you, Erica. So now with, everything coming out with DCYF, and especially this $2.2 million settlement to Harmony Montgomery's mother, is this going to facilitate some meaningful change? Because if DCYF continues to behave in the fashion that they are, I would see significant penalties coming out of civil court. As more and more of these cases come to fruition, as more and more of these cases get litigated, you're going to wind up seeing the state stroking an awful lot of checks to to these people. A lot of whom, I got to be honest with you, I wouldn't trust them with a $10 bill, let alone after the attorneys get their cut and family members get their cuts and everything else like that. We're still looking at probably $300,000 or $400,000 that this individual is going to get, and she's on her social media smoking blunts. So I and again, and former drug addict, self-admitted former drug addict. Boy, man, there's nothing that can rekindle a love affair with a substance quite like $500,000. But we continue to just throw money at the problem. The problem is we don't have money to throw at the problem. So when does the meaningful change come in?
I'm hoping we're going to see that. The biggest part is we need to make sure that we know that these need to be looked at again from the ground up and understand where there's an appropriate role. I mean, we just had a man sentenced for killing his child and abusing his child. The sentence just came down today, or at least the press release did, and he's going to serve 45 years in jail. In those situations, it makes sense to have Child Protective Services working with the police in order to investigate these actual harms that are happening to children. Too many of those slip through the cracks when people who admit in the hospital that they had too much Tylenol and they gave their child ivermectin have CPS coming to take their children away from them. With that, we gained some ground because Representative Hull was able to talk about it because previously there was a gag order. We got that changed so you can actually talk about your interactions with the department. But I'd love to hear your ideas, Ann, because we're fighting the best we can here in New Hampshire. We're working to reverse this course, but you see the national picture as well.
Well, I look at it and I first of all, thank you so much, Erica, for your position you're taking and the fight that you're in. I mean, taking a stance in public service is brave these days because I think America is at a boiling point and Americans have had enough. I mean, if you spend 5 minutes on X, for instance, you can take the temperature of America and we're done. We're fed up. We want arrests. We want justice and we want our freedom back because we fully understand that the word sovereignty is all over the place on the internet now. People are talking about it. So when you say from the bottom up, I say it's really the top down because we, the people, created government, right? God created man, man created government and corporations. So we really are the top echelon. And that's one of the things I want to kind of emphasize is to get let's start using the proper language and get that the ethos out there so that people understand we're in charge and the government is supposed to do what we say. And the Constitution is a trust document. God and the government is as the trustee and the people are the beneficiaries. Well, what we've seen happen is the trustee and the beneficiary relationship has swapped. And that's why all this money is flowing to the government and not to the people. Because again, this entire relationship that we have has been inverted and we aren't being protected by our Constitution because the government is ignoring it and they're supposed to refer to it when it comes to our rights. They simply don't do that. So how do we sort of take control of a situation? Well, again, if you start talking about the people up here, we have got to instruct our public servants. So Erica, the people in New Hampshire should be telling you what they want, right? That we should be telling our representative, this is what we want to have happen. And you should be listening to the pulse and putting forth legislation. And I'm assuming that's what you're doing because you're sitting here on this show. I really doubt that Keith would have you on here if you weren't that kind of representative. To that end, this is why notices and people who have been harmed by the system have the ability to use affidavits. And these may sound like scary terms, but they're really not. A notice is telling the government what you want. An affidavit is telling the government how you've been aggrieved, and you're giving the government or the person who's harmed you an opportunity to correct that grievance. And if they don't, then there's penalties associated with it. But when that affidavit is unrebutted, it does become truth and fact in court. So if we start to really understand the very basics of how government works and how we, the people, have to continually notice and tell the government, or if we've been victimized, give them an affidavit and just flood them with that. If we start to use our tools, we actually can facilitate. Case in point, Washington State, the Attorney General was elected unconstitutionally so, and they noticed and sent affidavits to Attorney General Pam Bondi. The next day, she contacted the state of Washington to notice them. And what did the governor do to respond to her notice? He passed a law, or I shouldn't say passed, he signed a law, totally unconstitutional, that says no other National Guard can enter the state of Washington. Well, that's not going to fly because they know that they've broken the law. So what they're trying to do is stave off any potential arrests in their state. We can do this, but it just requires the people to take one simple step of action in civic duty. And that requires you just to be very vocal with your public servant. This is how the country was founded, and this is how it's going to succeed.
And I have a question from a listener, from a viewer, who wanted to know, how often are you seeing across the country cases where Child Protective Services are targeting parents who are choosing to homeschool their children?
Oh my goodness. I just spent time with Sam Sorbo. Funny you should bring that up. She's the homeschooling queen.
Oh yeah. No, we got to get her on, actually. That would be a great guest to have on.
Oh, she's just phenomenal. Absolutely, brilliant and grounded. And boy, do her children show the evidence of homeschooling.
Did you read Braden's new book?
My husband's reading it right now. I'm not kidding. Phenomenal. He's sitting in the living room reading it right now. So we just had dinner with them about a week ago at before a Trump event here in South Florida. Anyway, yes, homeschooling parents, absolutely targeted. I homeschooled my children, but somehow I managed to fly under the radar. I'm not quite sure until, of course, I got put on the domestic terror list and was, taken to second base 6 times a week for 2 years with the TSA because I fly a lot. But I do think homeschooling parents, look at the FBI. It was weaponized against parents in school board meetings. It's again, the FBI, okay? General Flynn put a tweet out today. It was blistering, and he's basically telling Donald Trump and Prakash Patel and Bondi, it's like, we need to rein in the FBI. We need to eliminate the CIA. We need to get all this, and we only need a couple of agencies, right? One for domestic and one for foreign. And these agencies domestically need to work literally connected into our sheriff's department. Mm-hmm. If we need an agency at all, it's to provide a database so that when the sheriffs make a query, sort of like NCIC or something, or Interpol, that they have access to information that might be important to a case they're working on locally. But to say we have federal jurisdiction coming in, come on, Rick Bradshaw, the sheriff in Palm Beach County, never should have let the FBI bust into Mar-a-Lago the way they did. That was ridiculous. Everybody knew it was a setup. But again, we have inverted the entire law enforcement system. FBI is not law enforcement. It's a bully. It's brown-shirted bullies that are going around and intimidating people, as evidenced by J6, as evidenced by what happened at Ruby Ridge.
We're down to less than a minute here, Ann. So Ann Vandersteel, co-founder of America Made Foundation, please tell viewers and listeners how they can connect with you.
Thank you. I have a website, AnnVandersteel.com, which has all of my social media. And I encourage people to follow us also on AmericanMadeFoundation.org, where we have educational information, and AmericanMadeAction.org, where you can actually take action. We have a take action button.
All right, please check. And thank you so much for joining us. God bless. Keep up the good work, and love to have you back on.
And if I can say one more thing before she goes, yes. I've received some of these notices and affidavits. I've dug into it. I'm not convinced that actually is the process. So that's a conversation for a different day. I think that in getting instruction, we need the clear specifics about DCYF is doing this, and we need you to change this.
Correct.
All right. And thank you so much. Again, welcome back anytime.
Thank you so much.
All right. And I want to thank our guest who stuck around for the full 2 hours, Erica Layon, State Representative, Republican for Rockingham 6, representing Derry. Thank you so much. We are going to follow up on what we talked about, and we're going to see what we can make happen.
Sounds good. I probably wanted to talk about twice as much as I did, so I probably left a few things unsaid, but I'll be happy to be back.
That's okay. GraniteStateLive@gmail.com if you'd like to share your thoughts about tonight's program, or if you have a topic that you would like to see tackled here, we welcome your feedback and your comments. GraniteStateLive@gmail.com. For all of us here and from Right America Media, I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. God bless, be safe, and remember, be nice to one another. Civility, it works. God bless, everybody. Have a great week.